What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to break down my running back starts and sits for week 4 of fantasy football. You guys know the saying by now. 1 is a dot, 2 is a line, 3 is a trend. We have 3 weeks of data to go over, to sort through, to figure out which backfields are messy, which ones are clear, who we know is getting the receiving work, who we know is getting the early down work, goal line work. All that stuff is what we're going to break down today in this video. By the end of this video, you guys should know who you can confidently start, who you should be sitting, maybe who's only a flex play at best. Everything will be covered like that in this video today. So if you guys enjoy this video, go down to the bottom, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, any running back starts or sits that you have for this week, we will answer for you, and subscribe to the channel if we answer a question for you, or if you're just enjoying the content, because we do pump out quite a bit of it every single day here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange. So another thing too, I'm going to be making reference to my rankings throughout this entire video. If you guys want access to my rankings, there's 3 ways you can get them. You can go to thefantasystockexchange.com, buy them outright for $20. You can go to underdogfantasy.com, and they have a new special best ball resurrection contest, I believe is what it's called, starting this week. And you can use promo code FSE when you sign up on Underdog and deposit $10. You'll get $10 on top of whatever you deposit by using our code, and you'll get our weekly rankings for free the rest of the season. Or you can become a Patreon, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Link is in the description for that. So without further ado, guys, we're going to hit the intro. So Thursday night football this week, and another dumpster fire game of a Thursday night football game. We have the Jaguars at the Bengals. In this game, you're going to be starting Joe Mixon, and you're going to be flexing James Robinson. This Bengals offense, I'll start with the Joe Mixon side of things. They're running a bottom 3 offense in terms of pace of play and neutral script pass rate, which is really odd from the Bengals, because typically in Zach Taylor's tenure, they've been a team that's run a lot more up tempo, and they've also run a lot more passing plays than they have running plays. It's really strange to see how they're running their offense. Maybe it's a consequence of their defense playing a lot better, which it is right now. So that is something to keep in mind with Joe Mixon, which kind of bodes well for him from a rushing perspective. But overall, in general, for all fantasy positions, we want offenses to be running up tempo. We want them to be running at a fast pace. And volume is just so elite with Joe Mixon that none of this really matters. I just thought I'd, kind of bring that up about the Bengals offense in general, because it could lead to them being a little bit more low scoring than we anticipate. And that affects Joe Mixon, obviously. So like I said, the volume is so elite for Joe Mixon. He's just an auto start top 10 guy. As you guys can see on the screen, he is pretty much getting every piece of useful volume that you could ask for out of a running back. 83% of the rushing attempts. He's running almost 60% of the routes for the team, 10% target share, being targeted on the routes that he's running, all the short down and distance, all the goal line work. About half of the long down and distance and 2-minute drill is all his. So everything about Joe Mixon is what you like to see if you are a Joe Mixon owner. Again, of course, he needs to hold up to that workload over the course of the season, which I've kind of expressed my concerns about already. But onto the Jaguar side of things, we have James Robinson, who finally had a good showing this week, showing 21 opportunities for 130 yards and a touchdown. This is a sell window, though, in my opinion, because I still don't believe in this offense. That's really what it comes down to. I think Robinson's workload will be inconsistent due to this offense not being able to, 1, move the ball very much because they can't really generate a lot of first downs consistently, and 2, the fact that they're going to get game scripted out of games sometimes where, yes, James Robinson is the receiving back, but they're going to be so down in games because they're such a bad team that they're going to be forced to throw the ball downfield. They're not going to necessarily look to James Robinson quite a bit. So that's kind of my concern with James Robinson's situation. If you can sell him off the back of this big game for a guy like Miles Sanders, for example, who had a bit of a down game, maybe you can package James Robinson plus and get up to a Jonathan Taylor. As you guys can see on the screen, he is getting the usage. That's not my problem with him. He is clearly a feature back. 65% or so opportunity share of the Jaguars backfield is definitely what you love to see. But this offense is just so bad. And this offensive line is bad. This quarterback plays bad. Play calling is bad. Everything is bad in the Jacksonville Jaguars situation, which is not typically something I want to invest in with my fantasy team, unless James Robinson is like a flex play for me, my RB3 or my RB4. But I'm assuming for those of you who have James Robinson, you probably drafted him to be your RB2. And that is a situation that I'm a little bit nervous of. So off of this Thursday night football game, we can get into 1 p.m. Titans at Jets, the first game that we have on the docket here. Obviously, you'll be starting Derrick Henry every single week because he is Derrick Henry. Sit all of the Jets running backs, but continue to stash Michael Carter, because as this offense improves, Michael Carter's role will as well. And I don't think this offense, as it is right now, one of the worst offenses in the league, probably the worst, I don't think that's going to continue for the New York Jets, because they've played a very tough schedule. They've played against the Patriots, they've played against the Broncos and the Panthers, who are all looking to be very good defenses so far. And they've just had such a problem moving the ball on offense that I don't think that's going to continue. I think Zach Wilson, Mike LaFleur, Robert Saleh, these guys are going to figure things out to the point that they're actually going to perform like an NFL offense for a change, which they haven't been doing thus far. And that'll only benefit Michael Carter and all the pieces involved. So as you guys can see on the screen, Michael Carter, his role has increased pretty much each and every week. The really encouraging thing is that Michael Carter got 69% of the rushing attempts this past week, which is a big jump from the 21% and the 37% that he got in previous weeks. And you can also see that when he's running routes, he's also getting targeted. Now, Ty Johnson is still taking away the long down and distance. He's still taking away the 2-minute drill snaps. He's also taking away the short down and distance and the goal line work. So Michael Carter still has a ways to go. But like I said, if you can afford to stash him on your bench, if you don't need immediate production, maybe you're 3-0 right now, go ahead and do that, because I think this guy is going to be more valuable as the season goes along. As we talk about all the time with rookie running backs, that typically tends to happen as the season goes along. They usually get better, and they also usually have fresher legs by the end of the season as well. So Michael Carter, a good stash, but nobody that I'm willing to start on this Jets offense. And Derrick Henry, like I said, you are throwing him into your lineup as a top 3 running back this week. Lions at Bears, the next game that we have here. Start both of these guys every single week. Both of these guys are in my top 12. It's pretty much been 3 weeks so far of the DeAndre Swift show. He's a top 3 running back in fantasy right now, and he's been extremely valuable. The volume that he gets is extremely valuable volume. He is number 4 currently in the NFL in weighted opportunities. And what weighted opportunities mean, for those of you that don't know, is it takes into account how much a target is worth versus how much a carry is worth, because typically, you're going to get more fantasy points on a target because you get points for the reception. You also tend to average more yards per reception than you average per carry. So weighted opportunities are a big deal in fantasy, because if you look at a guy like Nick Chubb, for example, who gets a lot of carries but doesn't get a lot of targets, DeAndre Swift actually bests him in weighted opportunities because of the targets that he gets. So will DeAndre Swift ever get 80% of his backfield because Jamal Williams is still there? He's still involved? Absolutely not. DeAndre Swift is never going to be an 80% opportunity share, at least this season, getting 20 carries a game and 10 targets a game. But the framework for DeAndre Swift, and this is what we liked about him, me and Danny and some of the other DeAndre Swift stands out there, was guys like Alvin Kamara, guys like Aaron Jones, guys like Austin Eckler, who this coaching staff has worked with, Kamara and Eckler specifically. And that's exactly what we're seeing out of DeAndre Swift. We're seeing a 12 to 15 carry, 6 to 8 target per game running back. And that's exactly what we want to see, because 1, it'll keep him healthier. It won't make him overworked like Joe Mixon, for example. And 2, he'll remain efficient as well. And then on David Montgomery's side, the only thing that I'm concerned about is Justin Fields / Matt Nagy looking this awful every single week. Because if they can sustain some more offense, and they obviously got pummeled by the Browns last week, then I still think David Montgomery is a back-end RB1. I still think Justin Fields is going to help his outlook because he's a mobile quarterback. Once they actually drop some plays for their mobile quarterback, that'll definitely help out David Montgomery. And as you guys can see on the screen, he gets all the volume that you could ask for. The only thing he doesn't get is the 2-minute drill snaps, and there haven't been that many of the 2-minute drill snaps thus far for the Bears offense. So we honestly can't even make a definitive judgment saying that he won't get them. So David Montgomery, again, still a top 12 running back for me. We just need this Bears offense to get better. Justin Fields hopefully gets better as a quarterback. And now we can move on to Colts at Dolphins. In this game, you're going to be starting Jonathan Taylor, flexing Myles Gaskin. A lot of people are going to be looking to buy Jonathan Taylor right now. I'm sure he's on everybody's buy low list on the internet right now, but I have to admit that I am a little worried about Jonathan Taylor. And the reason I'm a little bit worried is because Carson Wentz doesn't look good. He's playing on, half an ankle right now. The offensive line is banged up. It sounds like Quentin Nelson's going to miss a couple weeks. We had Braden Smith, the right tackle, highest paid right tackle in the NFL right now, out for, God knows how long. Their left tackle not looking very good as well. And while he receives some involvement in the passing game, Jonathan Taylor, he doesn't receive enough to the point that he's game script proof. So this Colts offense needs to be better and needs to be playing in closer games than they are right now for Jonathan Taylor to reach that RB1 ceiling that we want for him. It isn't quite enough right now to overcome the efficiencies of this offense. The Colts are putting up 18.7 points per game right now. And if they continue to be a middling offense or even like a bad offense, which is what they've been so far, then I don't think Jonathan Taylor can be an RB1 in fantasy. I think he's going to be stuck in that RB2 range. And that's not what you want if you drafted this guy at the tail end of round 1, beginning of round 2, which is probably where most of you drafted him. So I'm not actively looking to buy Jonathan Taylor right now, is basically my point of this entire thing. As you guys can see on the screen, he is getting a majority of the rushing attempts, which is exactly what we want to see. He's getting the short down and distance, the inside the 5 attempts, but we haven't seen the big plays out of Jonathan Taylor right now. He hasn't looked like a superstar running back necessarily. And we know Nyheim Hines is going to dig into his workload, and we know this offense isn't quite as good as we thought it could be. So that's my concern with Jonathan Taylor. Again, not a guy I'm looking to be buying right now, but if you do have him, maybe field some offers, see if you can swap him out for an Antonio Gibson or something like that, because I would prefer Gibson over Jonathan Taylor as it currently stands. So on Myles Gaskin's side of things, we're a long ways from the near 70% opportunity share that he had last year that made him basically a back-end RB1. He's only getting a 55% opportunity share right now. And I hope you guys avoided him in your drafts because he was on my top 5 bust list coming into the season. He's a middling RB21 for me this week, and he kind of consistently will be in that area every single week. I hope you avoided him, because I think he needs to be traded away ASAP. If you guys have Myles Gaskin on your roster, trade him away for Robert Woods, trade him away for T. Higgins, trade him away for, Gaskin plus something for a CD Lamb or something like that, because Myles Gaskin is never going to achieve an RB1 ceiling ever again. He's probably never going to achieve a top 16, top 18 running back ceiling because he simply doesn't get the volume. This offense isn't good enough, and he's not a good enough player to overcome that. So that's basically my thoughts on Myles Gaskin. You can still start him every single week as a top 24 running back due to the nature of the position, but he's a guy that I'm looking to shop because, as you guys can see on the screen, he gets the snaps, he gets, a good share of the rushing attempts, good share of the routes, and a good share of the targets, but he doesn't get the goal line work. That was Malcolm Brown. He doesn't get the 2-minute drill snaps all the time. They do split it amongst all the running backs. So big concerns about Myles Gaskin. Hopefully you can try and trade him away, but he is still startable this week as a top 24 guy. Browns at Vikings. Again, this game is pretty straightforward. Start Kareem Hunt, start Nick Chubb, start Dalvin Cook if he plays, and then if he doesn't, obviously you start Alexander Mattison. I'm officially glad that I didn't draft Nick Chubb anywhere, really, because as we say really often, Nick Chubb is a phenomenal real-life running back. I think Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, and Nick Chubb are probably the best pure runners of the football in the NFL, but his ceiling in fantasy is limited, and it's for a number of reasons. One, he's only seen 3 targets all season so far in the first 3 games that we've seen. He had a big splash game from Kareem Hunt last week that vastly limited Nick Chubb's ceiling, which is going to happen because Kareem Hunt is a great player in his own right. If you can sell Nick Chubb right now for Saquon Barkley, for DeAndre Swift, for Najee Harris, for Aaron Jones, for Austin Eckler, go ahead and do it because Nick Chubb is a big name player. He has been very fantasy relevant for a long time, and we know his ceiling is limited at a back-end RB1. We know that about Nick, so I would rather have all those guys than Nick Chubb right now because he's simply limited as a back-end RB1. That's really all it comes down to. So if you have Nick Chubb, again, start him obviously in this game, but I would be looking to shop him. And on the Vikings side of things, of course, we know Dalvin Cook is a stud when he plays, but in his absence, I just wanted to go over Alexander Madison's workload because I think it is important. 68% of the snaps, 74% of the rushing attempts, 50% route participation. Was getting targeted pretty often. 35% of the time that he was running a route, he was getting targeted. He got all the short down and distance snaps, which obviously would lend itself to goal line work if there was any in this past game that he had. He is splitting a bit of long down and distance and 2-minute drill snaps with Amir Abdullah, but that's fine. He's still an RB1 if Dalvin Cook is going to be out for this game. And of course, Dalvin Cook, if he plays, will be an RB1 in his own right, probably the RB1 on the week in terms of my rankings if he does play in this game. So moving on to the next game, we have the Washington football team at the Atlanta Falcons. You start Antonio Gibson, you start Mike Davis, and you flex Cordero Patterson. So all offseason, I'm going to address the Antonio Gibson situation because I'm sure Antonio Gibson owners are very nervous right now about some of the usage that we've seen out of him. All offseason, we talked about the possibility of Antonio Gibson being the next Christian McCaffrey. I wrote an article called Antonio Gibson is the next Christian McCaffrey. It doesn't look like he's going to see that usage, right? That was the legendary upside. That was the ceiling projection for Antonio Gibson. The bright side, though, is that we saw a 25 opportunity game in week 1 in a good game script. So even without the 2-minute drill snaps, even without the long down and distance snaps that J.D. McKissic will be getting, he still can get great volume. And also, he was the RB4 last year before his turf toe injury without any involvement on third down or any involvement in the passing game. He's getting a modest uptick in those areas, which is a good thing to see. And he was a top 5 running back last year without that usage. So the only issue now is that without a J.D. McKissic injury, without J.D. McKissic going down, Antonio Gibson's ceiling is likely top 5 to 8. It's not top 3 like it could have been if he got that usage. And as you guys can see, he's getting virtually 0 inside the 5 carries right now, and that should adjust itself once they get some more red zone opportunities. Long down and distance, 2-minute drill snaps, like I said, he's getting virtually nothing. So that is JD McKissic's role. Most of you guys are probably a little bummed, like I am, that Antonio Gibson didn't see that uptick, but don't panic. This is still an RB1. Like, this guy's still going to get great volume, great usage, and he's still a very talented player who's capable of breaking off 75-yard touchdowns like we saw last week. So don't panic on Antonio Gibson. He's still a top 12 running back, just probably not the same ceiling as some of the other guys that are going around him. Maybe DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones. Those guys have higher ceilings than what Antonio Gibson has. So on the other side of things, on the Falcons side, based on common sense, I would assume that most of you probably assumed that Mike Davis is losing routes and 2-minute drill snaps and long down and distance snaps to Cordarrelle Patterson, because Cordarrelle Patterson is a top 10 running back right now in fantasy, and he's doing it on the back of receiving work. But that's not actually the case. If you guys can see on the screen right now, Mike Davis is still dominating all of that work. He's still getting a majority of the targets. He's still getting long down and distance and 2-minute drill snaps. So in my opinion, Cordarrelle Patterson is a guy that is going to fade into the dust pretty much. In a couple of weeks, he's not going to be relevant anymore. And Mike Davis is still going to be the guy. He's getting most of the volume in this offense, 16 plus touches in every game so far for Mike Davis. Both run defenses in this game are bottom 5 in rush DVOA this season. So I think you can fire up Mike Davis as well as a top 25 guy. And I think you can flex Cordarrelle Patterson if you need to, because I think he's a guy that's inside my top 35 running backs or so. And I'm probably going to have to flex him if T. Higgins doesn't play in this week's Thursday Night Football. So Texans at Bills, the next game that we have here. I'll try and speed up some of the ones that are a little bit more clear-cut situation. Sit all the Texans running backs. It's a complete mess, complete committee. Don't want to start them, especially against this Bills front, which has been very good against the run. Now, on the Bills side of things, a lot more murky, but we do have some new information that we got to go over. Start Zach Moss in this game. And I'm going to say that right now, he's a top 25 running back for me in my rankings. Since Zach Moss's weird week 1 inactive, he's been the guy to own in this backfield. Go pick him up if he's on your waiver wire. Houston is 30th in the NFL right now in rush DVOA, allowing top 10 fantasy points to the running back position. Like I said, Zach Moss right now is my RB25 on the week. I have him just ahead of the Broncos running backs, just ahead of Leonard Fournette, just ahead of Damian Harris, but just behind guys like Mike Davis, Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, guys like that. So that's kind of where I see Zach Moss this week. I think you can fire him up into your lineup, as you guys can see on the screen. Like I said, since that week 1 inactive, we've seen Zach Moss's role slowly increase. This past week, he had 56% of the snaps, which is like the lead back role, obviously. 45% of the rushing attempts, ran a lot of routes as well, got some targets, and was able to get into the end zone and gets all the long down and distance and 2-minute drill snaps, which is a little weird given the size profiles of the two running backs that we see there. So on to the Giants at the Saints. Again, pretty simple. Start both of these guys. Top 10 options, Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley. Quickly on Saquon Barkley, it took him 3 weeks, but he's finally back to being an every down back. As you guys can see on the screen, 48% of the snaps, 84% and 86%. And this past week, he got it all. He got the rushing attempts, the routes, the targets, short down and distance, inside the 5, long down and distance, 2-minute drill snaps. Don't worry about Saquon Barkley. He's a top 6 running back the rest of the season. You can fire him up in this game against the New Orleans Saints. To the Chiefs at the Eagles. Start them both. Start both Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Miles Sanders. Again, I'm not excited about both of these guys, but they're both inside my top 20 running backs because both CEH and Miles Sanders are mid RB2s. That's what they are. That's what they've always been. Anybody who convinced himself of anything else was delusional on Clyde Edwards-Helaire specifically. Nothing really changed for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. His usage was the same. As you guys can see on the screen, the 60 to 70% range of the snaps is what he gets. Same goes for the percentage of the carries. He runs about the same amount of routes last week as he normally does. The only difference was that he actually played better. That was pretty much the difference between CEH last week and CEH in the first 2 games. He still doesn't get inside the 5 work. He still doesn't get a lot of receiving work and target percentage. He has a 5% target share on the season right now. He still cedes 2-minute drill work to Darrell Williams right now. So that's kind of the concern with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's why he's a mid RB2 and not an RB1 like he could have been if he was a little bit better of a player. So sell him now if you can. If you have CEH and you can turn him into a better option because he had a big game this week, if you can turn him into Miles Sanders, who's in this very game, I would absolutely do that. If you can turn him into Chris Carson, if you can turn him into Jonathan Taylor, I would definitely go out and do that. So on the Miles Sanders side of things, Miles Sanders got game scripted out of Monday Night Football. I think he'll be just fine. He's still a mid RB2, but he may have some floor weeks like the ones that we just saw this past week against the Dallas Cowboys defense. So speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, Panthers at Cowboys, the next game that we have on the schedule here. Both of these run defenses have been quietly very stingy against the run. And it's a little surprising because we didn't expect the Cowboys defense to be very good at all. And nor did I expect the Panthers defense to be very good. But in this game, despite that, you can still start Zeke Elliott. You still start Chuba Hubbard, who is the biggest waiver wire add on the week, and you could still flex Tony Pollard. So on the Cowboys side of things, Zeke had his coming out party this week against the Eagles. He had a very good game, but these guys will continue to eat into each other. Zeke and Tony Pollard will continue to eat into each other, take the touchdown away from the other, take some of the receiving work away from the other. But both running backs are in my top 30 this week, with Zeke at RB13 in my rankings. Now, on the Chuba Hubbard side of things, this is the important thing that I got to go over. And if you didn't watch my waiver video yesterday, he was my number one waiver wire ad on the week. Chuba Hubbard is the back to own in this Carolina Panthers backfield, with Christian McCaffrey out for the next 3 to 4 weeks with the hamstring injury that he's dealing with. Once Christian McCaffrey exited the game on Thursday night, Chuba Hubbard outsnapped Royce Freeman 38-11. He had 9-0 of the third down and fourth down snaps against Royce Freeman, and he tallied 10 carries, 5 targets to Freeman's 5 carries and 1 target. So the big question for me is, can Chuba Hubbard maintain that third down usage? Because in college at Oklahoma State, and Chuba Hubbard is a rookie. For those of you that don't know, he was a 4th round pick from Oklahoma State. He was a Heisman finalist in 2019, and then he had a down injury-riddled season in 2020. But my biggest concern, even in 2019 when Chuba Hubbard was at his peak, this was a guy that wasn't good as a receiving back. He wasn't good in pass protection. And that is where Royce Freeman has made his money thus far in the NFL. So there's a good chance that they do use Royce Freeman in that role. But even still, I still think Chuba Hubbard is a top 24 play this week at running back, because he should get the bulk of the carries, any goal line work that needs to happen. And he does still have some breakaway speed to break away some long plays. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Carolina Panthers backfield. Now, on to the 4 p.m. game, Seahawks at 49ers. Again, Chris Carson, nothing's really changed with him. You start him each and every week. He's an every down back who gets really everything in his backfield except for 2-minute drill work. As you guys can see, Travis Homer, he does cede that work away to him. But other than that, Chris Carson's pretty much an every week starter. Now, on the 49ers side of things, you're going to flex Elijah Mitchell if he plays and flex Trey Sermon if he doesn't play. So pretty straightforward here. Sermon received the Elijah Mitchell role. As you guys can see, he got 48% of the rush attempts, 45% of the routes, 33% of the inside the 5 work, which is basically what Elijah Mitchell was seeing when he was in the lineup. But the issue with what Trey Sermon did was that he wasn't as efficient as Elijah Mitchell. So if Elijah Mitchell is out, Trey Sermon's a top 24 guy. But if Elijah Mitchell plays, I expect Elijah Mitchell to regain that starting role over Trey Sermon, because he looked like the better running back. He looked like the more efficient running back, looked like he knew more what he was doing. I think that comes from being a 4-year starter at Louisiana Lafayette. It looks like Elijah Mitchell is more pro ready than what Trey Sermon was. So if Elijah Mitchell plays, he's a top 24 guy. If he's out, Trey Sermon's a top 24 guy. On to the Cardinals at Rams. So in this game, you are going to be starting Chase Edmonds. You're going to be starting Darrell Henderson if he plays. And then if he doesn't play, obviously, you're going to be starting Sony Michel. So with the Cardinals backfield, we know what it is at this point. Edmonds is currently my RB21. He's basically just Myles Gaskin in a better offense for me. As you guys can see on the screen, as we've seen for the last 3 weeks, he is the primary snap getter in the backfield. He's going to be on the field the most. He doesn't get quite as much of the carries as James Conner gets, but he does run a crazy amount of routes, over 60% in all 3 games. Gets an 18% target share over those 3 games as well. Gets all the long down and distance and the 2-minute drill snap. So like I said, he is basically Myles Gaskin if Myles Gaskin was in a better offense and had a little bit more of the volume that he had last year. So that's basically my thoughts on Chase Edmonds. He's going to consistently be a guy that is in my top 22 or so each and every week, depending on his matchup. He has a tough matchup this week, so he's at 22 for me. But either way, he's a guy that you should be able to flex or start each and every week. On the Rams side of things, we've pretty much seen whoever the starter is, they get the lead role. As you guys can see in week 1, Darrell Henderson was the clear-cut starter, 94% of snaps, got all of the work. Sony Michel last week was the clear-cut starter, 74% of the snaps, got all the work. So whoever's the starter in this game, and the starter is Henderson if he plays. And if he doesn't play, it's Michel. So if Henderson plays, he is the guy. He is the back that you want to be starting in this game. If he doesn't play, obviously Sony Michel is that guy. So we can move off of this game onto the Steelers at Packers, and another game that is pretty straightforward. Top 10 running backs in both games. Quick thing on Aaron Jones that I wanted to talk about is that he's received 100% of the inside the 5 attempts so far this season. So those of you that were concerned about A.J. Dillon potentially stealing that role away from him, it's not a concern. Aaron Jones is getting the work in the red zone that we thought he would go, that we knew he was going to get, basically, because Aaron Jones has been historically very efficient down there. And we didn't think just because A.J. Dillon is bigger that he would get the inside the 5 work. So that is good news for Aaron Jones. Now on Najee Harris, I know you guys are going to start Najee Harris, but I figured I'd just show you his usage just because it's completely hilarious to me. As you guys can see on the screen, 96% of the snaps, 80% of the rushing attempts, 86% route participation, 21% target share, 100% of the short down and distance, 98% of the long down and distance, 100% of the 2-minute drill snaps. Absolutely absurd usage. There's no way Najee Harris is never not in your lineup because that usage is absurd. I don't care how bad the offense is. That is like James Robinson from last year usage. So that is the thoughts on those two running backs. They are in your lineup each and every week. Onto the Ravens at Broncos, a lot more of a murky situation than that previous game. But Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon are both every week flex plays, in my opinion. And Tyson Williams is also an every week flex play. So we'll start with the Broncos backfield because this backfield is basically a 50-50 split. As you guys can see on the screen, Melvin Gordon does dominate in pretty much every area of the backfield, but Javonte Williams is still heavily involved. It's going to take a couple weeks still for Javonte Williams to have his big game, to be the starting running back for this team, but be patient. If you guys drafted Javonte Williams, you had to be aware of this outcome because Melvin Gordon is playing well. We can't take that away from Melvin Gordon. He's playing well. He's holding off Javonte Williams from taking over the starting job, basically. This is what happens with rookie running backs. They tend to struggle early in the season. Javonte Williams basically fumbled on the goal line. That's going to piss his coaches off a little bit. So it's going to take him some time to regain this backfield. Think of J.K. Dobbins last year. Think of DeAndre Swift last year. Think of Cam Akers last year. It took them until week 8, week 9, week 10. It took Cam Akers to like week 12 to take over his backfield. So that is the thing you need to take into account with Javonte Williams. If you don't have Javonte Williams, I encourage you to go trade for the guy because his value right now is pretty low in the eyes of the person that drafted him. So you can probably get him for pennies on the dollar. And if you're 3-0 or 2-1, especially, this is a guy that you can reap the benefits of long-term and down the stretch of the season. And on Tyson Williams, I've got good news and bad news on Tyson Williams. Good news is that his role didn't change last week. So despite him only seeing 6 touches in that game, his role was the exact same. As you guys can see, his snap share was about 50%, rush attempts around 30%, routes about 45, 50% as normal. But the bad news is that games like this will keep happening to Tyson Williams because Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman will take away some touches. And this backfield, as I've talked about before, is already a small pie. Think of this big pie of the Ravens rushing offense as one with a big bite taken out of it, because that is what Lamar Jackson represents as a rushing quarterback. So he is going to take away the primary running back touches from whoever the primary running back is. And in this case, it's Tyson Williams. So Tyson Williams, his share of the backfield is a lot smaller than somebody who has a non-mobile quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, for example, because Lamar eats into that work a lot. So on to Sunday Night Football. And this game I am uber excited for as a Buccaneers fan because Buccaneers at Patriots, Tom Brady's home, return to Foxborough. We just signed Richard Sherman this morning as I'm recording this. So I'm really excited for this game. On the fantasy side of things, you're going to flex Leonard Fournette in this game and you're going to sit Damian Harris. So on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers side of things, as you guys can see, Leonard Fournette is the running back to own in this backfield. I'm going to say it again because I said it last week. I hope you guys listened to me. I hope you guys went out and maybe threw out some offers for Leonard Fournette, or you started him or you put him in your lineup, because Fournette is the guy to own here. He is a weekly flex option, in my opinion, because he gets the primary snaps. He gets the primary rush attempts. He gets most of the routes. He gets most of the targets. He gets any inside the 5 work that'll eventually come for him because they literally have not run the ball once in the red zone this year. And he gets the long down and distance snaps, especially now with Gio Bernard potentially banged up. He might even get the 2-minute drill snaps as well. So Leonard Fournette, a guy that needs to be into your flex spots each and every week. He's currently my RB26 on the week. He's a guy that I'm willing to put into my flex spot if I have him. Now on the Damian Harris side of things, I told you to sit him. It's because he's outside my top 30 running backs. And I am slightly concerned about Damian Harris overall long-term, but especially in this game because James White is injured. That is something that happened. He is going to be out for probably an extended period of time. He had a hip subluxation or whatever. So he's going to be out for a couple of weeks at least, if not most of the season, I would say. So Brandon Bolden and JJ Taylor are going to be more involved like they were once James White went down. But Damian Harris has seen his role decrease over the first few weeks or so. And as a 1 and 2 down banger, which is exactly what Damian Harris is, he'll probably be game scripted out of this game because we know Tampa Bay can put up points. We know that they're going to throw the ball like crazy. And if Damian Harris and the Patriots are playing from behind, we know that he's going to be off the field. We know he's going to be phased out of this game plan. We're going to see a lot of JJ Taylor, a lot of Brandon Bolden, which is not what Damian Harris owners want to see. So if you have Tony Pollard, if you have Leonard Fournette, if you have the Broncos running backs, if you have, I don't know, a number of other options, you can start them over Damian Harris this week, because I didn't even mention the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense is still as good as it's ever been. So he's not going to be very effective on the ground, even if he gets 15 carries in this game. So he needs a touchdown if he wants to be effective, because he's not going to break off a long run. He's not going to have a shit ton of carries and a great game script. So that's my thoughts on that game. Now on to Monday Night Football, the last game of the slate, Raiders at Chargers. And I think this game, probably from a real-life NFL perspective, should be a good one. Both of these teams have started out hot. Start Austin Eckler in this game. He is literally a top 5 running back in fantasy right now. And if Jacobs plays, you start him. If he doesn't play, I would say you can low-end flex Peyton Barber and Kenyon Drake. But I'm a little bit concerned about that backfield if Jacobs doesn't play. Now, I tend to think that Jacobs is going to play in this game because given how close he was to playing last week, he was basically ruled out like 30 minutes before the game actually happened. I think because this game is a Monday nighter, he's got an extra day of rest. I think he's going to play in this game. So if he does play, he's a top 25, top 30 type of running back at minimum for me, and he's going to be in my lineup if I have him. If he misses, like I said, Peyton Barber is a low-end flex play. Kenyon Drake also a low-end flex play because these guys kind of split time. And with Jacobs out these past few games, the Chargers have been absolutely awful against the run. They're number 31 in rush DVOA on the season right now. So Peyton Barber should be effective on the ground if he gets the bulk of the carries if Jacobs is out. If he doesn't, obviously Jacobs will be effective in his own right, and Kenyon Drake should be mixed in the passing game and all other things like that. So if you guys did enjoy this video, as I mentioned, go down to the bottom, leave a like on the video. It helps us out tremendously. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps us out. Doesn't cost you anything. Comment any of your thoughts down below. Those also help us grow in the algorithm as well. We will answer any comments that you have for us. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, if you're enjoying the content that we put out. Maybe this is the first time you're watching one of our videos. Hit the subscribe button. It is completely free to do so as well. Now, if you want to get our weekly rankings, I made reference to them. The 3 ways that you can get them: buy them on the website for $20. Underdog Fantasy, promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit. You'll get them for free. Patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. That is all, guys. Peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.